Welcome back to Travers Talks. I'm your host, Jim Horn. I'm coming to you once again from beautiful Traverse City, Michigan. And this is your Michigan political wrap. It was a busy week in Lansing and Detroit and on the campaign trail. Petition deadlines came and went. A Republican candidate for governor dropped out, and the State House muscled through a controversial voting bill. The Democratic State Convention boiled over on the Israel question, and the data center fight that's been simmering up here in northern Michigan finally landed center stage in the governor's race. So let's get into these 5 very interesting stories. The governor's race field is set on Tuesday. It was set on Tuesday, April 21st, was the filing deadline for candidates to turn in petition signatures and make the August primary ballot for Michigan governor. So when the dust settled, 9 major party candidates had filed, pending signature verification by the Bureau of Elections. On the Republican side, Congressman John James, former Attorney General Mike Cox, businessman Perry Johnson, Senate Minority Leader Eric Nesbitt, and Pastor Ralph Rebant. On the Democratic side, Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson, and former State Auditor Kim Thomas. The big late week story was former House Speaker Tom Leonard dropping out of the Republican primary on April 23rd. Leonard told reporters the race has become increasingly negative, and he said the political environment does not consistently reward a campaign focused on substance and bold solutions. And my translation is he was struggling probably to raise money in a very crowded field. So what does this mean for Grand Traverse County? Expect every one of these candidates to swing through northern Michigan this summer. The August 4th primary is just over 3 months out. Whoever wins each side faces off November 3rd to replace term-limited governor Gretchen Whitmer. Next up, the House passes proof of citizenship voting bill. The Republican-controlled Michigan House passed a bill requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote for the first time. The vote was 58-46 along party lines. The bill now heads to the Democratic-controlled Senate, where it is widely expected to die. Supporters say it's a common sense election integrity measure. However, critics, including Democrats and voting rights groups, argue it could disenfranchise married women who've changed their legal name, low-income residents who can't afford the documents, and rural voters who have to drive long distances to a Secretary of State branch. Here's the context that really matters. A Michigan Department of State review of the 2024 presidential election flagged just 15 ballots out of more than 5.7 million cast as potentially coming from non-citizens. I can't even tell you what the percentage would be on that, huh? Where would the decimal point be? Anyway, and here's why this story isn't going away. Even if the Senate kills the bill, a parallel ballot initiative is moving forward that would put the same question directly to Michigan voters through a constitutional amendment. We could be voting on this in November, folks. Next up, the Democratic Convention erupts over Israel. On Sunday, April 19th, Michigan Democrats gathered at Huntington Place in Detroit for what party leaders called the largest delegate turnout in their history, and it was also the most contentious. Pro-Israel candidates were booed from the floor. The loudest reaction came when Congresswoman Haley Stevens, running for U.S. Senate, and University of Michigan Regent Jordan Acker were announced on stage. Both have accepted support from AIPAC, and that is the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee. The headline result, delegates unseated Regent Acker and endorsed Dearborn attorney Amir Mackled for the U of M Board of Regents. Mackled has represented students who face charges for protests demanding the university divest from weapons manufacturers and Israel. Jewish Democrats left the convention rattled. One delegate told reporters they may need to create our own table to remain in the party. The Israel fault line is now the defining intra-party fight for Michigan Democrats heading into August, and it shows up most clearly in the U.S. Senate primary, which brings us to story number 4. The U.S. Senate primary is a three-way dead heat. Senator Gary Peters is retiring, his seat is open, and the Democratic primary to replace him is the most competitive in Michigan this cycle. The latest polling shows 3 candidates essentially tied: Congresswoman Haley Stevens of Birmingham, State Senator Mallory McMorrow of Royal Oak, and former Wayne County Health Director Abdul El-Sayed. The contrast couldn't be sharper. Stevens is the establishment choice, pro-Israel, backed by AIPAC, strong labor ties. McMorrow built her name on viral floor speeches and has taken a more critical line on Israel. El-Sayed has the endorsement of Bernie Sanders and is running explicitly against the pro-Israel lobby. So whoever emerges from August will likely face a competitive Republican. Michigan is genuinely purple, and this seat could decide control of the U.S. Senate. For listeners up here in the Grand Traverse region, pay attention. Northern Michigan turnout in August could decide a primary this close. And finally, data centers take center stage in the governor's race. This one hits home. At a candidate forum late this week, 5 Michigan gubernatorial hopefuls were asked how they would handle the wave of large data center proposals sweeping the state. Their answers, notably bipartisan, converged on 3 ideas: local moratoriums, identifying specific zones where these projects might be appropriate, and dramatically increased transparency and community input. At least 19 Michigan towns have already paused new data center development. Ypsilanti's water utility this month approved a temporary ban on supplying water to large data centers, citing capacity concerns. And in the legislature, House Bills 5594 through 5596, a bipartisan package from Representatives Wartz, Fox, and Wegela, I hope I pronounced that name correctly, would freeze new data center approvals statewide until April 1st, 2027. The bill faces an uphill climb. House Speaker Matt Hall and Governor Whitmer have both been cool to broad moratoriums. Why this matters in Grand Traverse County: Northern Michigan has abundant land, cool temperatures that data centers love, and a power grid that hyperscalers are eyeing. Whoever wins the governor's race in November will set the policy framework that determines whether the next Meta or Microsoft project ends up in our backyard or somewhere else. So, to recap this week in Michigan politics, the governor's race field locked in at 9 candidates, with Tom Leonard dropping out. The House passed a proof of citizenship voting bill that's likely DOA in the Senate, but headed for the November ballot anyway. The Democratic State Convention exposed a deepening rift over Israel, and the U.S. Senate primary is a 3-way dead heat. And the data center fight is now a top-tier issue in the race for governor. That'll be very, very interesting. I'm Jim Horn. Thanks for listening to Traverse Talks. We're going to be back at you when further national news, or actually I should say further political news, comes on the scene. Be prepared. We're going to have a lot of candidates swarming around northern Michigan this summer. It'll be great. Get out and listen to them. Hey, I'm Jim Horn. This is Travers Talks. Have yourself one great week.